Welcome to the podcast, Sister Lives, a red flag rewatch. This is a podcast for disenchanted fans of Sister Wives, fans who fell in love with the Brown family, watched their precious kids grow up, and became enchanted with all the love, only to be told it was all a lie. Nothing was as it seemed. We were bamboozled, fooled, duped, tricked, conned, swindled, hoodwinked. What did we miss? Where did it go wrong? Come help me find out as we watch from the beginning. Hey, welcome back. My name is Mopsy Bumblefluff, and my puppy over here is Barky McSnortle. Today we're going to discuss Season 20, Episode 2. It was aired October 5th, 2025. Episode description says, Meri's speed dating event starts out awkward until she meets Ron, and Christine has a hard time dealing with Tony and McKelty's decision to move. And so it starts out, Meri says, so Jen drove up with me today to Salt Lake City, and now we're at a speed dating event. And they're getting ready for it to start. Meri says the fact that I'm 54 years old and I'm out here dating again, it's strange, it's surreal, it's weird, and it's nerve-wracking, and it's hard. And I understand that. Yes, she's 50-something years old, and she's only ever been with Kody. And that has got to be hard. Especially she lives in Parowan where there's not many people. And how do you meet people when you're divorced after 50? That can be a hard thing. So I'm proud of her for getting out and about and doing what she's doing. She's sitting there with Jen, and Jen is giving her some sample questions. Jen says, if you could pick one superpower, what would it be? Meri said, I don't know. Jen says, invisibility. Meri says, really? She said, yes, I would commit a crime and no one would see me. And then they're talking about other questions you should ask. And one of them's very clever. You should ask questions in a certain way, as in, what crimes have you committed? Not what crime, not what have you been convicted of, just what crimes have you committed. So it's funny. That's funny. So Jen's just trying to make her feel better. And then it cuts over to Kody, and he says, we bought Coyote Pass before we even moved to Flagstaff. We bought a dream. We had a dream. The dream is gone. And Janelle says it's been 2 years since Kody and I split up, and we still are not on all the titles of the property. I've been asking that forever. I mean, look, ideally this would be simple. He just has to add us all. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. And it shows Kody outside, and he's cutting up wood. I think he thinks that makes him look manly or something. I don't know why he's constantly messing with wood. Robyn says, that smell always reminds me of growing up in Montana. And they sit down, and Kody says, I want to be done with Coyote Pass. Robyn has been struggling to let go of the dream. He says to Robyn, I figured it's time for us to figure out Coyote Pass. And Robyn says, I'm scared. He says, I just want to sell. Yeah, I just want to be rid of it. It's a source of pain. Where are you now? And Robyn says, I don't know. It's been kind of hard to come to terms with that. It's awareness of a dream that never manifests, that was really tough. Coyote Pass was a big thing in our world. I just kept going out there, putting my good energy and just going, okay, we're going to get out here. We're going to get out here. It's really hard to say, okay, I'm done, especially if we didn't do it. We did nothing. It shows some footage of Robyn walking across Coyote Pass. And I don't think we've ever seen this footage before. I wondered if she just filmed that. It was odd. She was wearing a hat and she was walking across the pasture there. And a long time ago, Corey and Carly would always make fun of Robyn because they thought that maybe she might be a secret witch. And I think about that sometimes, like she's walking across that land and she's saying stuff like, I'm putting my good energy into it. That's a good theory. Janelle says, I'm not actually sure I've ever had the dream of all of us being out on Coyote Pass. I could see myself out there. It's a beautiful piece of property. Why not? But nobody ever really wanted to live out there. Christine didn't want to live out there. Meri would have done it if everybody else had done it. Robyn has a house, like she had a house that was pretty much there without it being there on the property. And I didn't realize that until recently, that house overlooks Coyote Pass. So she basically was kind of on the property. He says maybe when it sells, they'll be so happy that they'll be nice. He's talking about Janelle and Meri. And Robyn says, you've been kind of hard too. She says, it seems like there's a lot of miscommunication that happens really quickly and really easily. You know, those little firecrackers. There's like a string and you just kind of light each other. Pop, 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 pop. He says maybe this time will just make us all feel like, oh, that was petty, let's just be nice. He sits on the couch and he says, listen, I have this wife, her name is Robyn. She's got a conscience that is angelic and very close to God, and she would never let me do anything naughty as bad as I want to do it. And then he does that crazy laugh and grin that he does. And Robyn says, to be honest, I think it's really hard to move on from what I thought it was going to be. So then Kody says, so for you, it's a symbol of our family. And he says, I'd say it 100 times probably, I'm sorry, but this still happened. And Robyn starts to cry. She says, I need to get over this. Now, I started a cry count from season 1, so I don't know what number cry this is, but I know she's on cry number 9 in season 1, so I don't know what this is going to be. Kody says, maybe we do move on. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to tell you I'd rather sell. Robyn says, oh, I'm so tired. I have to move on. Robyn says, everybody else says I have to. And Kody says, everybody else is moving on too. Robyn says, yeah, they are. Robyn says, Kody wants to sell. Janelle wants to sell. Meri wants to sell. It feels wrong. It feels like I'm betraying myself and the family or something by giving in. I'm kind of running out of choices. It is what it is. Robyn says, it's just hard. Kody says, you ever have the feeling you kind of like to just sell it all and pick up and move? Do you ever get that sense, or just get away from this whole valley? Robyn says, I feel like the little kids have done really well here. Kody says, but I'm not talking about leaving Flagstaff. I'm talking about leaving the space we're in. And Robyn says, I don't know. You have heartache wherever you go. Kody says, I didn't have a lot of heartache before we moved here. Robyn says, well, I did. I had a lot of hard times before I met you and stuff, so I just want enough space for our kids when they come around. I agree one day when your kids decide they want to come over. And Kody says, this house has blessed us, don't get me wrong, but my heart was broken here by so many things. I picked up the phone to my son's passing, and he's getting tearful, and he says, I want out so bad. And this whole scene is kind of exhausting because I feel like they're trying to set us up into the fact that this house is probably already on the market and they've already been eyeing this other $2.1 million house that they eventually did get. Maybe con us into believing that they really need to move and these are the reasons they really need to move. When in fact, he's probably only selling Coyote Pass. They're trying to get all their assets together so they can buy it. And that's another thing. It was some TikTok video I was listening to, and I can't remember who said it, but they said that they think that one of the reasons that Kody and Robyn held onto this land so long is because they needed it to where it was mostly in their name, like 75% in their name, was so that they would have the assets to be able to buy this $2.1 million house. And once they were approved for that loan and they were able to get it, then they decided they would sell it and put it back in everybody else's name. And so it was the way it was weird and mostly in Kody's name was just so that he looked like he had more assets than what he really did. And so this conversation is discouraging because I feel like that the house that they're in, it is so clean. It is immaculate. There's barely anything in it. That house is already up for sale. I don't believe when they're just now coming to this decision that maybe they need to sell it. So Meri says, so Jen and I talked a lot about it. What I'm looking for, and I always joke about it, is 6 feet tall because I think a tall guy would be really super awesome. But I'm also not going to shut down the opportunity if he's not 6 feet tall, but he's got a whole bunch of other good qualities. But 6 feet tall would be great. So it goes on to her first speed date is Lee. Lee says, do you know what we're supposed to do? And Meri says, talk. I think, yeah, introduce ourselves only if you want to. And she's asking this guy this question and she is leading this conversation. And he's like, yes, no. And she says, beach or mountains? He's like, I'm in the mountains right now. And she's like, awesome. And she says, what else do you like to do? And Lee says, concerts. So he was not a wealth of information. Meri says, maybe I wasn't asking quite the right question because there was a few times when I'd ask a question, it would be just like an answer, a word. Then Jeff comes along and Jeff, for some reason, gets on Meri's nerves. Jeff says, how are you? And she says, I'm good, good. And he says, I guess you're the house celebrity. She says in a talking head that she's not really sure when she's dating. The hardest part is knowing if they know who I am or not. And Jeff says, first time speed dating? Speed dating, yeah, yours? And he says, yeah. And Jeff says, and so how long have you been divorced? And he says, divorced? Like in a question tone. And Meri said, yeah, divorce would be the word. and it's been 2 years. Meri says, what about you? And Jeff says, married twice, only one at a time, and he laughs. I don't understand why this hurt Meri's feelings or why this offended Meri, because she jokes all the time about being a polygamist. And she joked about divorce being the right word, and all of a sudden he said, I've been married twice, but only one at a time. And she says, I don't like dumb jokes. I mean, I'm a funny person. I'm freaking hilarious. And Meri just kind of shuts down after that. And she tells us, she says, I mean, a dumb joke has to be a good dumb joke. It has to actually be a joke, not something that has to do with my family structure. It's so odd to me that this hurt her feelings. I don't understand that. And they ring the bell, and Jeff said, there's the dinner bell. So he got a big old X. And then Kody starts talking. He's sitting on the couch and he says, the concept of speed dating, that's pretty much what I was doing in my life before I was married, was just speed dating. I'd ask a girl out on a date. We'd go on 1 or 2 dates, usually just one because I was a little too weird for them. The way he is talking is concerning me. He's real tight and tense, and he's talking extremely fast. Like he's just answering the questions as fast as he can. And Dr. Adam, I listened to him about this show, and he said that Kody is acting very manic. And the kind of work I do, sometimes I will get people who are a little aggressive, and you kind of learn to pick up your spidey senses on the way that they're talking. When they talk real fast and real tense, they just seem like that's how Kody is acting right now. I'm wondering what is going on with him, and like it's concerning the way that he talks through this whole show. And just watching the way he makes these extreme faces, and what is going on with him. Then Daniel sits down, and she likes talking to Daniel, but it turns out that Daniel is 30. She says that he could be a friend, but she tells him that you could be my kid. This is weird. And then this guy sits down, and I feel like he's a plant because he seems kind of perfect. And his name is Ron. And Meri says, hello. And he says, I'm Ron. And she says, I'm Meri. And they go back and forth. You can tell they're getting along pretty well. It goes back to Christine. And she's saying that Mykelti and Tony went to North Carolina for Christmas last year. And then a couple of months after they were in North Carolina, they came over and they told us they were moving. And she said, kids have to do what they have to do, what they need to do. So I get it. I get it. It's sad though. And so then they make plans for Christine and David to leave earlier than Mykelti because they're going to be driving the big U-Haul and hauling the car behind it. And so they're going to be going a little bit slower. Christine's real sad here. She's crying a little bit, but she says that they need to do what they need to do. She gets it. And that is hard, I bet, for her. That is hard. And Mykelti said she's really sad because she's definitely going to miss out on a lot of the years that my kids are young. And she says Aspen and Mitch don't have kids yet. They're not going to have kids for a while, which is not true. I don't know if Aspen knew she was pregnant at this time or not. But she did just recently have her baby. Plus, we'll be close to Maddie. And she says, listen, Tony wouldn't let me live polygamy, so I can't have sister wives to rely on for multiple kids, which means the closest thing I have is cousins for my kid. And Tony says, okay, yeah, no. Please no. I remember when they first got together, Mykelti, she'd always been this irresponsible kid. And when she said that she'd met Tony and she's going to marry him, nobody was really on board. And I kind of wasn't really on board too, because she didn't seem like she was very responsible. Or she just kind of a fly by the seat of your pants type of child. But it looks like it worked out pretty good. They seem to be doing good for each other. They play and they get along pretty good. And then it goes to Kody, and Kody says, I don't think Tony and Mykelti ever really considered plural marriage. I think we gave off the image that plural marriage was easier. And he said, I actually had a relative get after me once for making plural marriage look easy. I don't think he ever made it look easy. I think it could have been easier if he hadn't been so selfish. And then Mykelti and Christine are talking again. She's saying that one of the reasons that they're moving is Tony needs to pursue his chess career. And Christine said, aren't you like wife of the century letting him have a chess career? And then she makes the little bunny ears. And she said, sorry, I shouldn't do that. I guess times are changing. And I thought, a chess career? That's not a career. Can you make any money doing that? Well, it turns out you can. I have Googled it. And over in North Carolina, they have chess centers, and it is a big thing over there. And the head coaches can make up to $63 an hour. The average head coach position, you have to work your way up, is $144,000 a year to run these chess clinics and do tutoring and stuff like that. And they have tournaments, like 3-day tournaments where they compete, where the grand prize is $12,000. So it's a new age, people. There are influencers and TikTokers and all these people making thousands of dollars. And most of us grew up in an age where you worked hard at a job for years before you made any decent kind of money. And these people are just going out pursuing their hobbies and getting all this money. It just doesn't seem fair. So I think we all get a little bit angry when these young people are just going out there and they're becoming chess head coaches and making thousands of dollars. It just doesn't seem fair. But times are changing, and so when somebody says, I'm going to pursue this, you have to keep an open mind because they might be successful. Things are different. There's a lot more outlets for people to do what they want to do. And Tony says, for me, it's the chess capital. I am someone who works in chess, makes content, and teaches and coaches. For me, moving out there is like so exciting. I think it is a good thing. They've got that podcast, which is probably a good source of income, and Tony can do this and have a good time, and Mykelti can be next to Maddie, and the kids can be together with Janelle close by. I think it's a good move. I really do. So I'm happy for them. And Christine says, have you told Dad? And Mykelti said, yeah, Dad knows I'm moving. Christine says, okay. Mykelti says, I told him he should come up and see us before we leave, and he did not. Christine says, I'm so sorry. Mykelti says that it is what it is. Then it cuts over to Kody, and Kody says, Tony and Mykelti's schedule kept advancing. We were trying to see them in St. George. They had plans that they could never move, and we had plans we couldn't move, and we were never able to make contact. It's just more excuses. Christine says, Mykelti and Tony were just sad that they weren't able to see Kody and Robyn and the kids before they moved. The whole thing has just been sad. With her relationship with them, it's just not what they had hoped it would be. The truth is, if you want to see somebody, you're going to see them. It doesn't matter how busy you are. It doesn't matter what you got going on. If you want to see them, you're going to see them. I know it's a few hours away, but there is no reason why Kody and Robyn couldn't go up there and see those babies and see Mykelti. They just didn't want to. It's the story of their lives. They just didn't want to, because if somebody truly wants to, they'll call you, they'll text you, and they'll find time to see you, and he just didn't. It's just how Kody operates now. And then he says, I think most of the relationships between me and my adult children are straight. It's an issue of trash talk and innuendo, and it has challenged loyalty and trust on all sides. And I wonder how many times he has said this sentence. He just repeats it over and over and over. Trash talks, innuendos, challenging loyalties. It just makes you tired. Can you tell I sound tired? Every time I read his words, I'm like, And then Isabel shows up. She runs in, she hugs Mykelti, and she says, don't go. And Mykelti says, I have to leave. I have a spare room though. Isabel says, we can grow old together. It's cute. It's cute. And Christine's in the background smiling. And Mykelti says it would be harder to leave Aspen and Isabel, I think, than anything else. They're my best friends. They're my sisters. And Mykelti says, are you crying? And Isabel says, yes. Are you crying? And Mykelti says, yes. Then it cuts to Isabel, and she says, it's a bit rude that once I leave North Carolina, everyone's moving out there. And Mykelti says, I'm sorry. And that is true. Isabel just got back from North Carolina. Now everybody's moving back there. It reminds me of when Maddie moved down to Las Vegas so she could be next to the family in the cul-de-sac, and they moved to Flagstaff, but Maddie was so mad. So Christine says that Mykelti tried so hard to get the whole family back together. She really wanted to, and it goes back to that awkward flashback where Mykelti told them to come over the day they were leaving Flagstaff, and Mykelti makes this big announcement. I think this is probably something that's one of the hardest things that this family is going to have to go through. But at the end of this all, we're still a family. And she's talking to Kody, who's looking off into the pasture. Robyn and the kids are standing way over there, and nobody can touch each other. Nobody can hug on each other because of Kody's rules. And that didn't go anywhere. So I think what Christine is saying is that Mykelti has tried to get the whole family back together again, and it's not going to happen. So she's going to move to North Carolina and be with Maddie and Janelle. And Christine says there's a lot of hurt feelings and frustration and anger and resentment and yuck. And that's a good way to put it. Just yuck. it goes back to Meri at the speed dating. She's saying to the camera, super important for me is to find somebody who wants to travel with me. I'm a road tripper and also must not have cats, must love dogs. Then immediately Ron sits down. Meri says, so how's it going? He says, good. Yeah, good. Meri says, have you ever done this before? And Ron says, never in my life. Meri says to the camera, Ron looks like he takes care of himself. I've actually been on dates before where the guys will show up in sweats, so I'm impressed that he's dressed for the occasion. Ron says, so tell me about yourself. How long you been single? Meri says, I've been single for 2 years. I have a dog. I have a child. I live in southern Utah. And Ron says that he has 3 kids, and they're all in their 20s, and they're very independent. I love my kids. I have a grandson. Meri says, that's awesome. Ron says, I do love dogs. And then he says, so I love to travel. And we find out later that Jen met Ron at the door. So she probably said, say this, 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 and this. Because he is clicking off the boxes one by one by one. And Meri says, yeah, he likes dogs. He likes to travel. And he's 6 feet tall and he's handsome. So there's that. And Ron says, I love warm locations. I have a favorite spot in Florida, in Sarasota. It's on the West Coast, just south of Tampa. Meri said, so if you had your choice, would you move to Florida? And then Ron starts talking about on his vision board, he would want a place near the mountains. Meri says, I love that you have a vision board. Ron says, would you say that you're more romantic, less romantic? What's your love language? Meri says, I do know my love language. My love language is physical touch. And then she explains to the camera that the 5 love languages are affirmation, quality time, acts of service, physical touch, and receiving gifts. This love language stuff has been around for a while. And it's very interesting. There is something to it because a lot of people feel love different ways. So sometimes when you think you're trying to make a person feel loved, you may not be doing it in the most ideal way. It's the way that makes them feel good. Some people like gifts, some people like nice words, some people like physical touch. I know for me, I like acts of service. If my husband goes out on a cold day and cranks my car up for me, I just feel so loved. And Kody says the oddest thing, like I just had to sit there and stare at him for a minute. He says, I had an experience with Robyn once where I learned what my primary love language was, and it was touch. And that's all he said. I had an experience with Robyn once. I understand what he's saying here. It's so odd. Ron says, my first love language is affirmation, and then the secondary is touch. He asked where she lives, and she says southern Utah in the opposite direction. And it was nice to meet you. The bell rings. It's over. And Ron says, yeah, when I met Meri, I thought she was really, attractive and very nice. She was easy to talk to. Really liked her eyes. I think I liked her hair, but she's got kind of a striking look to her, which is really nice, and I thought she was very attractive. She's a good communicator. So he seemed like he was real nice. And he says, I'm definitely going to put Meri down and I hope to see her again. It's all over. Jen says, okay, what are your thoughts? Meri says, I have so many thoughts. Jen says, I'm just going to come over and take a picture of your paper before you turn anything in. And Meri says, oh, I didn't score. I kind of started to write like little notes for some people, but I don't need to remember that. I don't want to remember. And says, tell me what your thoughts are. Like, what's your initial thoughts? And Meri says, some of them are hard passes. Some of them were really nice to talk to. The youngest kid, who the heck is he? But he was like the easiest to talk to. But he was 37. I could have been his mom. I don't know why he was here. He was definitely in the wrong age group, but he was fun. It was easy to talk to him. Ron was also easy to talk to. He was really nice. Jen says, yeah, I pre-screened him. Meri says, yeah, did you? Yeah, because he came in late, so I was like chatting with him a little bit. So she gave him the cliff notes and told him what to say. Then she said, oh, I told him, hi, I'm not single. I'm not part of this. Yeah, except for I'm just watching right. Meri says, out of all the men, Ron would probably be the only candidate for me. Jen's like, let's go get his number. Meri said, I think that's Emily's job. She's talking about the director's job. Jen says, listen, I don't have time until tomorrow. They're here now. Meri says, what if he's like a no on me? Jen says, look, I've already chatted with him. It's fine. Meri says, you're so dumb. And then she folds up the paper and she says, I'm just going to wait till tomorrow. I'm going to decide if I want to. And she does that Meri thing where she's like, I don't know, and I'm going to think about it, maybe tomorrow. And Jen says, no, you're filling that thing out, or I'm copying it. I will get my own and I will fill it out myself and put your name on it. I will forward your answers. And it's not against the law. Meri says, yeah, you're right, except we're in a church. And Jen said, oh, that's not going to bother me. Guaranteed. That's not going to stop me from doing anything. Meri goes back to, I need to take a minute. Maybe tomorrow I'll decide if I want to fill it out. She's just very indecisive. Jen says, because you love me, you will fill out that QR code thingy. If you want to continue to be my friend, you will do it. It's good for you. Meri says, I don't know. Let's just let nature kick its course. And Jen says, speaking of which, I have to pee. And Meri's like, yeah, I have to pee too. So I really like them. I know y'all find them annoying, but I like them. I took a picture of her card when she was writing under the table, and I couldn't see much because she was covering it up a little bit. She wrote on Ken's a big old X, and by Daniel, she said that she was willing to be a friend, and Jeff, she wrote an X, and then she wrote 37, and then she didn't write anything by Ron. So I don't think she was taking this whole thing very seriously. They go out the door, and on the porch, looks like a little Yorkie, and Christine says, don't let that thing in. We don't do rats. And she's telling David, don't get close to that dog. And Christine says, I've never seen this dog. I don't even know whose dog this is. No idea. And their house, I love the color of their house. It's almost the same color as my house, that navy blue color and the white trim. I like it. It's pretty. They're looking at the U-Haul, and David says, ready to haul this big beast? Christine says, how are you going to get out of the subdivision? Where are you going to turn? David said, oh, that's easy. He says that Christine approached him and said, hey, do you want to move McKelty across the country? And I went, what? We just moved Janelle. Christine asked David, have you hauled one of these before? David's looking unsure, and he says, not with the trailer. And there's a car that's being hauled on a trailer behind the U-Haul. So not only is it a huge U-Haul, you also have this extended trailer being pulled behind it. David goes back to the dog, picks it up, and Christine says, no. David says, we'll sneak you in the car. Don't tell anybody. And then they're sitting on the couch, and David's throwing some shade, and he says, okay, let's go back a little bit further than that part. She has somebody that did not want to do a lot. Then when you found me, she said, I'm going to take advantage of that dude. Christine's like, no. David's like, yeah, finally someone that'll do what I want him to do. So he's just playing with Christine there. But it's true. She said that one time, that anytime she mentions that she might like something to happen, he just goes and does it. So David's sitting there holding the dog, and he says he wants to go with us. He's still trying to kidnap this dog. And Christine says, look, I'm very sad. I just want to sit and dwell in my sadness right now. And David is goofing off and stuff. I don't have time for that. And then David says, I'm going to go put this dog on that doorstep and ring the doorbell. So he's going to ding dong ditch this dog. Some random neighbor's porch, and Christine says, you just want any excuse to ring someone's doorbell. And so David puts the dog on the porch. I don't know if he rang the doorbell or not. And Christine's like, run away, run away. And she says, I can't believe he picked up that stray dog. And then the dog starts to jump off the porch and go after David. She goes, oh no, it's coming back. And then David said, yeah, we better get out of here because Christine will eat it. That's what I heard those polygamists do. They eat dogs. And Christine said, that is not true. Okay, we didn't have a lot of money. That's true, but we never ate our pets or other people's pets. David said, what about the rabbits? Christine said, no, get in the car. You shouldn't have picked that dog up. We're definitely not feeding it. Get in the car. Don't go out there. And Dave is warning the dog against the foxes. There could be foxes around there. They're in the right area for that. David's like, we could take him across country. It would be so cool. And Christine said, this is someone's pet. It belongs to somebody. David said, well, they lost it. Finders keepers. And it came to our house. Christine said, that doesn't mean we're going to keep it. They get in the car, and David says, I feel like a trucker now. Breaker 19. And then he picks up Christine's girly glasses, puts them on, and he says, I can't see through these glasses. They're fun. I hope they're like this all the time. He seems fun. Do you ever see that video on TikTok of him running like a jackrabbit, running around in the Moab red rocks? He's so funny. So it goes to Janelle and Meri on a Zoom call, and Janelle says, I've been kind of moving forward with my lawyer. I know Meri has too. And then Kody called me just recently, and he says, what if I put us all on the title? And Janelle makes this notion of, oh my goodness, is the sky falling? Because this call just came out of nowhere. She says, it's awesome. I'm like, yeah, that's great. I'm glad. I was thinking, well, I need to make sure Meri knows because I don't trust that Kody was going to tell her. I have no freaking idea why he does that, but whatever. So I wanted to kind of touch base with you about the last thing that we talked about. So I sent a bunch of stuff to my lawyer, and he asked me to kind of follow up on Kody's email about putting us all 4 on the pieces. And just about that time, Kody called me, and he said, we'll each get a portion and we can settle it. I'm open to that if you are. And Meri said, yeah, I'm in. I've actually been frustrated that he never responded like you said, following back up in June, and here we are at the end of August and I have not heard anything. Janelle says, yeah, he asked if I was open to it, and I said, well, that's fine. Have you talked to Meri? And he's like, why don't you talk to Meri? And Meri says, why is he afraid to talk to me? Janelle says, who the hell knows? I don't know. Meri says all this stuff about wanting to be friends with me, and then he won't talk to me. He is really manic here. And the way I do my podcast is I'll play the show, and then I have a voice recorder that will transcribe the exact words that are said so I can get it right. And my voice recorder could not pick up what this man was saying because he was talking so fast. And I had to write it down because it just couldn't keep up with it because that's how fast he was talking. But he says, I have completely upset them. Meri, she's kind of a nag. I didn't. I was like, oh, ignore her. She's like, I'm going to do legal. And I'm like, whoa, listen up. We're going to sell the property. What are you guys all upset about? Why did everybody get so upset? Meri says, I'm kind of confused. He just doesn't make any sense. I'm over here trying to figure it out. It's so dumb. Janelle said he always acts like such a victim, or that everybody's so mean to him or whatever. And then Kody says, well, it's because I wasn't talking to him. Because I was really just kind of confused. Kody, what are you confused about? He knows he's wrong. He knows he looks bad. And he's trying to play it off. And it's almost like he's saying, well, I need money, so I just robbed a gas station. I don't know why everybody's so upset. There is something wrong with him. I mean, just something wrong with him. Are y'all paying attention to how he's talking? It's a lot. And Janelle goes into, yeah, he has this shy, pretty wife now. And she's really shy and she's really pretty. And then she starts laughing and she says, sorry, I couldn't help it. Then Janelle is shown in the chair and she is deep belly laughing, like she just thinks it's hilarious. She says those are words he used. She's very shy and she's really pretty. I'm like, well, good for you. And she says, I was a little shy when we got married. Definitely was not submissive, so I guess he misjudged me. Meri says, the only wife he thinks is pretty, like is he slapping all of us? Janelle says, so I guess that his type is submissive, shy, and pretty and whatever. Okay, sorry, side note. I just had to have an ex-wife's club moment. Meri says, why don't you talk to Meri? Because I'm afraid to talk to her. I'm just scared. She's going to be so mean to me. I can't handle it. So she's making fun of Kody now. Meri tells Janelle, I don't think it's fair for you to be in the middle. I thought all this needs to be a conversation with all four of us. I don't know why he's doing it this way. And Janelle said, well, I invited him to be part of this conversation. And he's like, nah. And I don't really like you. She said, well, that's fine. I don't like you either. I don't care. I really don't care. Like, whatever he says does not bother me because I just don't care. And Meri says, I'm glad they're both mature enough to be able to just call a spade and just say, no, I don't like you. I mean, this is great. We're making progress here from a therapeutic perspective. Something I've learned is that when you don't have that emotion is when you have finally moved past relationships. So congratulations. Janelle says, I'm just having way too much fun at his expense. I'm sorry. He's just hilarious. He says this stuff to me, and I think he thinks it's going to get a reaction, but I just don't care. She's telling Meri the property has still held its value. It'll be a nice parting gift for all of us. Meri's petting her dog and says, yes, we're going to get a parting gift. Janelle says, which will be a nice way to be like, see you later. Hope I never see you again. Goodbye. Meri says, I mean, if we're not going to get alimony, I guess this is a good parting gift. Janelle says, but listen, I mean, if I had been legally married to Kody, sure, I would have took him for half of his assets. I would have, because half would have been mine. And I think more than half should have been hers because she was the main breadwinner for years. And she kept that budget and she made sure everything was paid, or at least a balancing act, so they had food and they had a roof over their heads for years. She did that. She deserves it all. Meri says, okay, awesome, later. Janelle says, like, I hope now this is going to happen. I'm not holding my breath because I know how Kody Brown works, so we'll see. And she's right. He says things but never does them. So he is a we'll see kind of person. We'll see if it gets done. Christine says when she saw Janelle last weekend that Janelle was so excited. She said, I almost wanted to slap her. Janelle said, I'm so excited to have all the grandbabies next to me. Christine said that Truly made the comment when they were just talking about life that she was going to move to North Carolina. And she says, I don't know if I even actually asked you if you wanted to do this. And David said, no, I don't think you did. You just said David's going to drive. She said, I thought I said, are you okay with driving? But the way I said it was definitely not a question. David said, no, it wasn't a question. She just said, David, you're going to drive. He said, and then he says, I could either sit at home and do nothing, and I'd rather be on the road traveling with you. You're so sweet. He says, across the country, see America. And Christine brings up finding tornadoes. Because David says, yeah, they have those shark tornadoes. I've seen a show about it. They're out there. Christine says, David has an insane idea that he would like to be a tornado chaser. Tornadoes, they literally create paths of destruction. Kody says Coyote Pass has to be sold because Meri and Janelle need to be paid their fair share of it. If we exit this relationship with the sale of Coyote Pass, then we're all free to go on and do something else. And he's walking into their clean, immaculate house that's probably already on the market. And he's showing Robyn the titles. He says, I want to show you the stuff that I've done with the titles. We're just going to have to sign. All you have to do is sign. And he's talking about how he's going to quit claim some parts and put his name on some parts and put Janelle and Meri on some parts. And that way they would all be 25% owners of the property. Between the four of them, that'll make 100%. And there's a lot of controversy about if everything had been fair, that they thought that maybe Kody and Robyn should have been considered one person and that Meri and Janelle, it should have been split up 3 ways. I'm by no means a Kody and Robyn advocate, but Robyn is part of the show. So I do feel like that Kody and Robyn should have been separate because it's like they're a business. So every one of them put in 25%. Which is why it makes me so angry when Kody's like, I didn't want to do him any favors. Well, they were business partners with you. They put in their fair share. Janelle wired you money and Meri came to your house and wrote you a check and handed it to you. So you're not doing them any favors. You're doing what you're supposed to do. Then he tells Robyn again, I really want to move away from here. This house is a source of a lot of pain for me. As much as I love this house, the idea of a new start is really enticing. It has turned out to be kind of a lonely place for me. We've been in this house for 5 years. We've been in a struggle for 4 of those years. I had this huge experience here because of the divorces. Robyn says, do you have time for us to sit down? We'll talk about it a little more. So they move from the kitchen area into the living room area, and then they eventually move out to the balcony. Basically, they're doing a show of their entire house so they can sell it because it's on the market. You know what they're doing because nobody does this. They're not in the middle of a scene and go, let's change rooms. They never do that before. And so here we are touring the house. I don't know what to do with this. I got this happy life and a happy wife and our kids. And because of the divorces, it just made it bad. I just want you and I to be able to start over again. Robyn says we need to have enough room for everyone, for grandchildren with our kids returning home and feel safe like they got space. Robyn loves her some space. She wants everybody to have their own rooms and lots of space. Robyn says, and then space for your kids to come and stay. Kody didn't say much about that, but he says, I think Truly would stay if she had a space that was her own. Robyn says that would be great. She says, I feel like it's really important for Kody to repair his relationships with his kids. Christine says in her new book that Truly would go and stay with Kody, and she didn't feel very welcome because she was put into a room in the house that didn't connect with the house. It was an odd room that only had an exit that went outside, like it didn't go into the house. And there was no curtains on the window. She truly just didn't feel comfortable. Why didn't he make her a space? I don't understand. If it was me, I would have told Brianna or Aurora, y'all need to sleep together tonight because Truly's here and she's going to sleep in one of your beds. So she could be in the house with them. I don't understand why he did Truly like that. I think that's why they keep talking about Truly having her own space, because that was really an issue. Remember when him and Christine were talking about Truly visiting after they split up, and she goes, Truly needs to have her own spot. And he says, yeah, we'll figure it out. I don't understand why you can't find somewhere for your child to sleep that's not connected to the outside with no curtains and no privacy. Robyn starts talking about it would be difficult to come home and see houses being built out there. I really struggle with it because we live really close to Coyote Pass. I would have to watch it get sold to people I don't know and then watch them develop the land. And she's just so annoying here. And I'm getting so tired of reading this transcript whenever she talks about, I just love this land. No, you don't. You love how much that land is worth. That's all you love. She didn't have any dreams of all the family together. She didn't have nothing. I have this theory that her and Kody were the first people to go to Flagstaff by themselves to tour Flagstaff, and they were probably going to tour the college that Dayton was going to go to. I think they saw that land and they saw that house up on the hill and they said, we're going to get this. We're going to figure out how to buy that house and get this land. And then they worked toward that. I think that's what happened, because they are shady like that. So when she talks about all that, I don't believe any of it about how much she loved the land. Kody says, you okay with the idea of starting over? Robyn says, I mean, it makes sense. And then Kody says, let's move out to another area of the house. So they go out on the deck. And he says, I want to go out there and feel it. Meaning, I want the audience to look at how great this house is so we can end up selling it. Robyn says, but I don't know if selling the house and moving is the answer for that. I get nostalgia when I start talking about this. Is this really what I want? But I think I need to go on. I need to move on. How about you give me a day or two to pray about it? And says, yeah, we can pray about it. But I got the best idea, the absolute best idea. Let's just start looking for a house that you want. And she says, that I want or we want? Well, if Mama's happy, everybody's happy. And she laughs and says, well, Daddy has to be happy too. And he says, yeah, I want my space. I want my office space. I want space for grandkids and Truly. And he says, but if we see a house, let's go look at it. Let's go over this, because the house that they're currently in right now, which we will call the McMansion, because that's what all the podcasters call it, and the new house they bought is being called the Crap Show Chateau, but they say the S word, which is a good name for it too. But the house they're in right now was listed on the market in August. And if you remember, the last show is the first day of school for the kids, and the first day of school in Flagstaff was August 7th. And that house was listed in August. So it was all in the same month. They listed that house. They filmed all in the same month. So this whole conversation is fake. That house is already on the market. It's already August. This house is listed. But what's interesting is that shortly after it got listed, Christine served him with papers for child support. And then the house got taken off the market. The theory behind that is that they sold the house, then that would be liquid assets that Christine would be entitled to. So they took the house off the market. So they had to establish paternity, and there was really, a lot of people were like, maybe Kody's not the dad. No, they had to establish paternity because Kody's name was never on the birth certificate. So they had to prove that Kody was the father so they could get child support from him. October 23rd, Kody hired a lawyer. And then November 4th, this house that they're currently in was sold. They bought the new house, which is a 6-bedroom, 7-bath house, which is 7,884 square feet for $2.1 million. They bought it October 28th of 2024. So they put this house on the market in August. They sold it in November. They bought the new house in October. And I think this plan was in the works for a while, because you know how they operate. They don't do anything quick. Because you really think they would have said, yeah, we don't want to live anymore, we want to move. They would have done it that quick. Do y'all watch Welcome to Plathville? Corey and Carly said that this reminded them a lot of Welcome to Plathville when Ethan and Olivia. Ethan has been putting Olivia off for a year and a half to get a divorce, like ignoring her, blocking her calls. She can't get a hold of him for a year and a half. And then Ethan gets a new girlfriend. And suddenly, he wants Olivia to get the divorce right now. And Olivia said, I'm not going to hurry for you. You made me wait like 18 months. You blocked me. You wouldn't take care of anything. And now you want me to take care of it right now. And Ethan's like, yes, right now. So this kind of reminds me of what Kody's doing right here. He's like, I got to buy this house right now. We're going to sell this land right now. And he's been putting them off for years. But they bought the house under the trust, and the name of the trust was Whitestone Trust. And so that's kind of shady to me. Like, why are you buying it under a trust? They're not even buying it under their name. They're buying it under a trust. That's weird. That seems like below the table type stuff. They ended up selling Coyote Pass in April of 2025, and it wasn't sold all in one piece. It was sold in parcels. They go back to the driving cross country, and Christine says it's our second day moving McKelty cross country. David stops at one point, looks at his phone on his weather app, and says there's like these little purple spots all over the map, and purple means tornado. We just received a warning for a tornado. And Tony McKelty are showing a video. It's got those scary clouds that look like they might turn into tornadoes. She says, I looked up, and that might be where it's the beginning of it. Look how it's pointing down. So it's not a tornado yet. David said, but it was bad weather, really dark, nasty weather coming. And the radio says that the weather's going to hit at 6:40, and the clock on the car says 6:37. McKelty says, look at this cloud. David says, we had the radio on, and all of a sudden they had an alert going on. There's a lot of alerts saying that there would be strong hailstorms coming and to seek shelter. Christine says, the phone rings, I answer, and McKelty is like, we're in a tornado, we're in a tornado. David said, well, just drive right through it. And then it kind of, that's it. They stop. They like to leave stuff on a cliffhanger. And it shows the hail hitting McKelty and Tony's car window, and it is causing little circular breaks. It's starting to break the window. That is scary. And I got to looking as to what should you do if you are driving down the interstate and you start to get pelted by hail. They say what you should do is you should go ahead and stop. If it's large hail, you should stop. And the reason for that being if your car is moving at a fast speed, it's going to make the hail hit your car even harder. So it's better just pull over on the side of the road. And they said if you can, you need to stay away from your side windows because your front windshield is built in such a way that it's not going to shatter. It's going to break all in one piece. That's because that's the way front windshields are made. If you've ever seen pictures of wrecks and stuff, you'll notice that the whole thing breaks like a sheet all together, and that's just to keep the people safe. So when McKelty says, get off the road, she's right, you should stop. So that's something to take with you. And then it goes next time on. Meri and her friends are doing a wine and paint class at her house, and they're painting eggplants, which is funny. It shows Kody and Robyn moving, and he's hauling away one of his big paintings. Then it talks about Christine and McKelty and Tony are going to be going through some tornadoes. So that's the end of that episode. Now we come to the part where we talk about a tell-all question, and mine would be for Kody and Robyn. And the way that Kody and Robyn got that house was they maneuvered it so that Janelle and Meri would sell their house and move into rentals and put their equity from the houses that were in their name in Las Vegas, that they would take that money and put it into Robyn's McMansion. And that's like why it was so frustrating whenever Robyn was, I'm looking for a rental, but we just have to buy this house. They were just trying to get the money in their names by getting the equity from Janelle and Meri's house. Janelle just gave it to them because she thought that they were polygamists and they've done it this way for years, and that they were taking care of Robyn and they'll take care of me next, which they never did. And Janelle even said at one point, are you going to put my name on the house? And Kody said, no, this is an asset for Robyn. And there is some legal ramifications for this because what Janelle did would be considered a gift and should have been declared as such when he bought that house, but it wasn't. He just said, that's my money. That's how he got that house. Robyn even says at one point that this house was meant to be a family asset. She said it on camera. I would ask Kody and Robyn, what is your plan for paying them back on that? I think Janelle's, from what I remember, it was over $200,000 she gave them. And I don't know how much Meri gave them. But what is your plan for paying them back for that? And don't you think it would have been better if you would have quit deed the entire Coyote Pass over to Meri and Janelle to split 50-50? So that way you could make them whole from taking their money, because now you're selling your house and you're using that money to buy a bigger house. You're not giving them back any money that they gave you. They had no benefit from that house. You were the only one that benefited from that house. Now you're selling it and using the money in your name. So it would have been better if he had just quit deed Coyote Pass over to them and they could have just split it 50-50, because Robyn and Kody have blown through some money that was not theirs to blow, that was family money, big chunks of money. So I think the way that they could have been close to making them whole was just to give them Coyote Pass. So yeah, that would be my question. What's your plan for paying them back for that? Because Coyote Pass was theirs already. So how are you going to pay them back the money you owe them?
That's it for today. If you like my podcast, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to reach me, you can always reach me at redflagrewatch@gmail.com. Thank you for joining me today. See you next time.
What do you call the security guards for Samsung? What do you call the security guards for Samsung Guardians of the Galaxy? Okay, see you later. Bye.